to this episode of Disrupt Education. I have Evan Brightfield here in Chicago, West Town. Thank you so much for having me at your building.
Of course,
man.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're about. What are you up to these days?
So I'm right now, for my full-time job, I'm the full-time director of photography for Image Fiction, which is my family's real estate marketing company. On the side, I do a lot of freelance work, doing photography and video work for a lot of different brands, fashion designers. It's kind of a mix of different things. It kind of makes it more interesting because I get to travel and I get to do things I wouldn't normally get to do at a full-time job, but I also get to have the reliability of a full-time job, which anyone in the creative industry can tell you that's like a very, I feel blessed to have the opportunity, because it's usually one or the other. You're either like stuck in a job where you feel like you want to do something that's a little off brand, but you can also go back and say, okay, I have to do these shoots on the weekdays and do things on the weekends. So I have a pretty good mix of those two things right now, and it's kind of been an ongoing process. I didn't really go to school for photography, which is kind of funny because I had like I was never very interested in school. It was kind of like something I had to do. My parents were like, you need to get good grades, standard stuff. And I was always a very creative and kind of artistic person. My dad and my mom were both designers. My dad did architectural renderings, and he kind of got me into this like digital media realm where I had access to a lot of things that most kids didn't at a young age, which was very, I'm blessed for that opportunity, because that was not, most kids didn't have like a DSLR in their hands when they were like 7 or 8 years old and messing around with the figuring out how it worked.
What was that like working at that young age? What kind of things were you doing?
I actually have like memories when I was like 5, being in the office like on days off school, and my mom didn't want to hire a babysitter. She'd be like, "Oh, go let's work with Dad." And it was like everything from like being in the office. It was kind of like he was just trying to keep me busy a lot of times. So it was like sometimes I'd be copying CDs for backups, which was like, that was like, oh, okay, I don't want to do this. But then the cool part was that he would be doing renderings. I have a very specific memory when Millennium Park hadn't been built yet, and he was doing a project for, I believe, this Mayor Daley's council that was basically trying to get it approved. And I remember him taking me up in like a dirt hill that was now where I think the band shell is. I'm not really sure exactly where we were, but I remember him being like, "Come on, we gotta go up here. We gotta take this picture." And I was like, "What are we doing out here?" Like, there was like homeless people everywhere, and it was like super dirty and just not a place you want to hang out. And he's like, "We have to get this certain angle. It's gotta be perfect." And he's like, "This is for the mayor. It's got to look perfect." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I didn't really know anything about what he was doing, but I remember like, "Okay, this is for the mayor. Like this seems like it's pretty important. This is kind of fun." And there's a lot of those times where I would go out on him to shoot these things, and I wouldn't really know what the final product would look like, but I would see kind of the energy he would put into this beginning stage, and that was I kind of subconsciously admired him for that. I remember being like, "Wow, this is amazing." But now looking back, I'm like, okay, like that's kind of where I got like this work ethic to really make sure things are good or as high quality as they can be from the very beginning, because it's easy to kind of be like, oh, that part doesn't matter. This part, no one's going to notice this if this isn't perfect. But that's kind of where I kind of first learned the importance of the details, which people will always notice the details no matter what you think they are going to notice. They'll always notice the details. And so, that was kind of how I got into photography, not really into it, but that's my first exposure to it. And then more recently, about 4 years ago, is after I left college and I was working for the family company, there was like this brief time where we had a need to do aerial photography, but we could never afford to do like a helicopter shoot for like a project that was only for a couple $1,000s. So it was kind of like, okay, we need to figure out how to get a better way to get imaging. And my dad was always obsessed with the idea of remote control helicopters and putting like a big camera on there. So he was like, "We're getting a drone. We got to get a drone." And at the time I was like, I don't know anything about it. I don't even know what a drone is. It was just like on the media for, how we're using them in the Middle East.
And more,
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, I don't know what that is, but that sounds dangerous. I don't want anything involved with that. And so he originally bought like an octocopter, which is like 60 inches wide almost, once you spread out all the propellers and the wings. And the plan was to like get a big, like our big normal Canon that we usually shoot with, which is like a couple pounds with a big lens on there, which we never actually even got in the air with the camera. We kind of just got it and realized like, what were we thinking? Like, this is not a good idea. And so I think that was a very expensive mistake, and I think we ended up selling that. But basically, what happened was we were like, okay, we need to start with like the base consumer model. So we bought like the little white Phantom that most people are pretty familiar with, and I got pretty. It was like this. It was like there was this time where the technology just wasn't there yet to take the actual pictures with these smaller drones.
Right.
And so we would have like a GoPro that there was like a mount on the bottom of the Phantom that you'd put the GoPro in, and then you'd angle it the angle you thought it should be at, and then you put it on the continuous timer and send it up and be like, I hope this is the angle. You'd have to look at it and see like, I think we're at about the right height. And that was so frustrating. And then the pictures were all warped because there was no like, the lenses were, I don't know. It was really frustrating time. I remember being like, I don't want to do this really. This is like too confusing.
You were building photography drones before they actually existed.
Yeah, it was kind of like we had to do like high level production stuff with stuff that you'd buy at Best Buy. And like at the time it just couldn't work. And now you can go to Best Buy and get something you can shoot like a movie with basically, because it's like, it only took 2 years and it's like now you have 4K quality and you're like while you're watching it. And so that was like the progressions. I wasn't like super into it right away because it was so frustrating. But it was kind of like that frustration had me like emotionally invested into it. So then when the new stuff rolled out, I was like, okay, this is actually really cool. I think I really want to do this like professionally, like full time, even outside of the company, because at that time it was really just a company need. And then once like we got the Inspire 1, which people are, if they know anything about it, that was like the game changer. Like, holy crap, we can shoot a movie with these things now. And I remember just looking at that screen and seeing it, and like it felt like a video game, and I was like, oh my god, this is like the coolest thing ever. And so like after that, it was kind of like I did it if I was being paid, if I did it anytime. You know what I mean? It was like if it was a cool sunset, I was out on the North Avenue beach trying to get a cool video of it. And so that was when I really was like, okay, this is like, I've never had a feeling like this when I was doing something that I also could get paid for.
Right.
And it's kind of like when those things kind of blend in together, no matter what it is, if it's photography or cooking, whatever, like if you can get that feeling doing something that you're really passionate about, you just need to run with it and kind of have that gut instinct. Because I didn't really have any other opportunities other than the stuff at work to shoot photography. Like I didn't have like paid people. People were like, I want to pay to do this.
So you created it, though.
Yeah, I probably did 100 or 200 shoots for people for free just because I was like, I want to just see if I, figure this stuff out and get pretty good at it. And you'll learn your lesson pretty quick doing stuff for free that, people will screw you over any chance they can. Depending on who you're working for. But
everybody wants something for free, right?
Yeah, no, I shot music videos and all kinds of stuff I never got paid or credited for. But I was like, I didn't really, I was just trying to figure out like, now I know how to do this thing with the drone and that. So it was kind of like, and I think that kind of goes back to entrepreneurship in general, is like your failures are never really a failure if you can take something away and say, okay, now I know how to do this a little bit better. Yeah. And that was really the thing that kind of kept me doing photography when I was kind of just doing it as a hobby, because I did it for work, but it wasn't as often as I would have liked. So I was kind of just doing them both at the same time. And I don't know, it was interesting to see how that kind of progressed, especially now. I kind of look back, because doing it day by day, you're kind of like, I got to get better at this or figure out how to fix that. But then looking back, 2 years, you're like, oh my god, like this has gone so far. And I guess that's kind of technology in general is kind of just like these small steps.
You can almost layer it up on your social media, right? I know a lot of people who do, and they tell their stories on social media, and then you go back 2 years and you're like, what was I thinking there, right? And it's allowed you to tell your story. So that's a lot of authentic education, jumping into business and working with your family and then going out on your own and rebuilding and building. Was there anything in standardized education that clicked with you, or was it just like, all right, this is just something I got to finish up and go with?
This is a baited question, because the only class I actually did that was in your class, the small business management class.
That's how I do it here on Disrupt, right?
No, so I did have, there were some parts of standard education that I think helped. Okay, so I'll talk about your class. So your class, we did the project. I think we just came up. It was like we had a charity, which was a.
Was it the T-shirt project?
Yeah,
back then?
I think it was the Animal Care League,
right?
Or one of those dog. Or it was something about saving animals. That's all I kind of remember. But
pause for
pause. So I kind of remember we had this session where it was a high school class. Kids are kind of like, oh, I don't want to raise my hand. Like I want to be cool. And, just sit in the back of the class. And I remember it was like we were trying to come up with a name, and I was like, oh, what about like Pause for Pause? And I think the person next to me ended up taking it because I was like too embarrassed to speak out.
Right.
And I was like, and so we went with that, and then we started designing T-shirts, and then we were talking about actually, selling these to raise money, and actually the design and the slogan and everything kind of rang. It was roll off the tongue well, so people were like, oh yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
And it was actually really successful from my memory. I don't remember the actual numbers, but it raised a fair amount of money for this charity.
Mm-hmm. So what does Evan Brightfield's high school look like?
It's kind of a hard question because my high school experience is very different than most people that are going into entrepreneurship. But I think that there's an opportunity for classrooms or for schools to have some kind of program that would be like students taking an interest, no matter what it might be, if it's cooking or working out or whatever it is, and then making maybe a vlog or some kind of way to get it out in the world where they're promoting some kind of content. Where content at its core is a product, even if it's not profitable, you're still kind of trying to get it widespread and share it throughout a lot of people. So I think that something that kind of focuses on that and taking someone's personal interest where they figure out things that are valuable to other people. Let's say you're teaching someone how to do a yoga position or whatever it might be, and then creating that content, putting it out into the world, and then figuring out how you get it to more people, because it's always like you post something and then you say, okay, how can I post this on certain things that'll somehow become viral,
right?
But yeah, so I think that's definitely a good intro into entrepreneurship, because once you do that, you can kind of say, okay, how do I turn this into a business if it starts to catch on, which it's always good to get to test your thing in the market before you start to make a business about it, because maybe no one wants to buy that product.
Right,
so,
you have to find the value in it.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely see like that in social media. I mean, as a teacher, honestly, one of the coolest things I get to see are people's paths.
Oh yeah.
With Instagram, you started with Facebook and a little bit of Snapchat, but I don't really follow that because I'm too old.
Yeah,
but
I'm too old for it too. Don't feel that.
You're right. Awesome. But like looking at your stories and how you progress. So I did want to ask, so where can people find you?
Oh, on Instagram, Evan_Brightfield. I'm coming up with a food vlog that'll be, I don't know the name of it yet, but it'll be somehow attached to that, so you'll be able to find it.
We've seen some amazing pieces of food on there. And
it's kind of like I mixed that with my dog and a couple of things.
Yeah.
My account's got a lot of different value that I add to it, and people will come for different things. But that's definitely where you can find me, and I'm going to be posting some stuff from my recent travels, and I also will have new prints available for not canvas prints, paper prints, because they're a little easy.
And that's on a website that you're revamping. What's that website?
EvanBrightfieldPhotography.com. Yes, that'll be up and running next week or so.
Okay, in a week. And you got to follow this guy's.
You can't hold me to that thing.
Okay, maybe 2. But you got to follow your dog, man.
Okay.
Your dog has got
French bulldog he's hard not to like.
Yeah, he's totally. Does he have his own Instagram yet?
Oh yeah, it's just _a_mouse, MAUS.
Oh man,
he's got more followers than like most people.
He's got more followers than me, I think. So, which is awesome.
Yeah,
love that, man. Well, appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me out. True Disruptor. Check him out on Instagram. Check out some of his amazing photography. And guys, we will see you next time on Disrupt Education.